Hello everyone and welcome to the Bet It Right show in conjunction with betitright.com. We're back for another episode and this is a brand new podcast that brings the football data to your door. Each week we'll update you on the key numbers and metrics that you can use to help you show off in front of your mates and allow you to bet better. So as I'm sure you all know by now, but make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast, tell all your mates about it and make sure you get involved with us at betitright.com. Now, we record this on a Thursday, so we won't know the outcomes to the Liverpool versus Leicester game or the Wolves-Arsenal game. So in our discussions as we look ahead to the weekend's fixtures, we will obviously be without that information. But that hasn't stopped us, obviously, looking into extensively a few Premier League games, which we'll get onto in a moment. But Dean, my sidekick on the Bet It Right show, alongside me once again, big week of football, big midweek results, notably for Newcastle, who have moved out of the relegation zone. That was a big win for them.
Yeah, who did they beat again? I didn't see the game. Who's it?
Everton. You're a Liverpool fan though, so we can sort of...
Oh, Everton. Yeah, never heard of them. Yeah, massive win for Newcastle. And we'll talk about Everton, like you said, in a little bit with their upcoming game against Leeds. But what a huge 3 points. I don't know if you caught the game, but yeah. St James's Park was rocking. Alan St. Maximin, when he fancies it, I mean, the guy's just a hero, isn't he?
There's a clip doing the rounds at the moment on social media of his highlights from the game, and he is box office, isn't he?
Yeah.
The concern is that despite the fact, I mean, I guess they can pay him what he wants now, but you'd have to think one of the big clubs in world football would be after him, wouldn't you?
They have to be. He's one of those players. Every single time he gets the ball, you just, I know it's such a cliche, but you just don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes I don't think he knows what's going to happen. And there was one part in the game where he drove into the box off the left-hand side, and it was like that old Maradona clip where there was 8 players around him.
Yeah.
And there were basically 8 Everton players around him. They won the ball, they got a corner. But every single time he gets the ball, if he can stay fit, he's just going to be... He's so important to Eddie Howe's chances of keeping Newcastle up.
We asked the question, didn't we? And this is going to be the debate topic, conversation topic on this week's show, who does go down. We posed that question on Twitter and I think Ash or Callum, whoever's in charge of our Twitter accounts, tried to troll fans of your club, Dean, by saying, will Lampard get Everton relegated? And a few people said that was a bit unfair on Lampard, but Everton are now they're in the zone, aren't they? They're in the danger area. Who do you think will go down?
Yeah, we are in the danger area, and we are one of the only clubs to never have been relegated. I think it's us and Arsenal. And I can remember back when I was a young boy, God, only like 5 years ago, and we survived on the last day of the season against Wimbledon. A game I think Hans Sagers got arrested for match fixing, and Barry Horn, Graham Stewart, 3-2. I remember I was crying, I was losing my mind, and that was kind of the last time when it was, we were right in there. And I don't know what's going to happen with the squad. It's having watched the Newcastle game, and we'll talk about it with the upcoming game against Leeds. I look at the squad and I think we've got too much to go down, but then, teams have done it in the past. But then I look at who's in the bottom 3 now and I think to myself, well, I think Burnley are really going to struggle because they just can't score goals. No winning 10 games, 11 draws, 1 win, scored 17 goals. I just don't see how they get out of it. With draws are not going to be enough. Watford, again, I think Hodgson's going to struggle to get them moving forward. And then it's one of another group. If you go down from Palace, I think I'll have enough. Brentford are on a slippery slide, 5 defeats in a row. Christian Eriksen, who we didn't mention last week, an unbelievable signing for them. Will he play? I still can't get my head around that so much.
Terrifying thought, isn't it?
Yeah, having watched the game live, the Denmark game, having watched that live, and crazy. Leeds, Everton, Newcastle. I think it's going to be between a straight shootout between Norwich and Brentford myself for the third spot. With Burnley and Watford, I'm already nailing them, putting a big heavy weight around their neck, and they're sunk. They're gone.
Well, Norwich are on a decent run at the moment under Dean Smith. He's got them playing better.
Unbeaten. The next 4 games are going to be key for Norwich. They've got City and Liverpool, and then followed by Leeds and Brentford.
Right.
So if they come out of, you'd expect them to come out of City and Liverpool with 0 points, right? So that just bumps the confidence a bit, and then it's bang, right, we need to get up for these Leeds and Brentford games. If they come out of that with points, then maybe. But if they lose against Leeds, lose against Brentford, I think that Brentford-Norwich will be the big shootout right there, because I do think Leeds will probably have too much. What about yourself? Who do you think?
Well, definitely agree with you, Burnley and Watford. Although Watford, it's a tough ask, but I did think they looked a bit more organised, admittedly in a small sample, just in the game against West Ham that I watched. They seemed a bit better than, I mean, I watched them against Norwich and I honestly thought they were hopeless. And I captained Emmanuel Dennis, who got sent off in the first game with a double game week in FPL. So that
they couldn't have been worse, though. Literally, your benchmark of the Norwich game is not a great benchmark, because
I was amazed, at how bad they were. I also thought Emmanuel Dennis looked, prior to him getting sent off, looked hopeless. His touches were shocking, and everyone was obviously sort of, siding with him in FPL because he was scoring goals and stuff. But just from start to finish, I thought they were awful. Anyway, they were a bit better against West Ham. They'll go down. Burnley, I agree with you. Weghorst, again, he's an interesting signing, but he's going to have to really produce something magic to keep them up. I said to someone, Norwich are an absolute certainty at 1 to 10 to go down earlier in the season, and now I'm sort of terrified. Not that I backed it.
But, not that I backed it. The old gamblers. I didn't back it.
I don't know. I think Norwich will probably go down, to be honest. I think Brentford will probably just survive. But
there we are. Timestamp it. The 10th of February. Timestamp it. Knock it in. And we'll come back.
Also, we're going to clip up the bit where you went, Everton are the only team other than Arsenal to never be relegated, or whatever it was, because that will be played over and over again. Go down. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I think the other thing is, as well as a non-Newcastle fan but a football fan, I would quite like to see Newcastle stay in the Premier League to see what happens with all that money next year and who comes to St James's Park and how far in the sort of ladder they can go with being the richest club in the world by about 4,000 million. So,
well, I think my final point on this, they've got something that no other club has, and that's St James's Park.
Yeah.
And as long as they can keep the fans on side and produce performances of the same energy as the game against Everton, then they have a massive advantage, because you're not getting that atmosphere at Carrow Road. You're not getting that atmosphere at Vicarage Road. You're not getting that, Turf Moor is obviously a difficult place to go, and that will be key for Burnley as well to get points at home. I think those two teams, if they can get the home form moving, they've got chances. But I think Burnley, like you say, Watford, and one of Norwich and Brentford, and I'm siding with you on the Norwich side.
There was an incredible photo of St Maximin looking at the Gallagher, and it was just
like that.
Yeah, sent it to a friend of mine who's a Newcastle fan. I said, "You want to frame that picture?" Anyway, from the stands at St James's Park to the tactics room we head, and Dean's got a treat for us this week. Well, we've touched on them briefly there, but they're going to be the focus of the tactics room today. And shock, but Dean's signing with his club, Everton, who have got Leeds coming to Goodison. What can we expect?
Just get my swimming cap on for a deep dive into Lampard's tactics.
What does he do?
Pardon?
What does he do?
Well, at Chelsea, he was much maligned for everyone saying he didn't have a clue, and it was not really clear what he was trying to achieve. And with Everton, it's kind of been the complete opposite, because he's come in and he's laid down a new formation. He's gone with a 3-4-3, if you want to call it that, or a 3-4-2-1 with a box in midfield. And he's trying to make Everton play a little bit more. And this matchup against Leeds is massive. Everton 16th, Leeds 15th. Leeds, another rock and roll performance against Villa. And Everton losing against Newcastle the weekend. The gap's 4 points, but Everton have a game in hand. So this game is massive for both teams. And Lampard's come in, they're now on a run of no winning 6 games. The only win was against Arsenal in the last 15. So this is a really poor run. And obviously Leeds, you've got this consistency. You've got them getting their players back from injury now, but they're still missing that spine of Cooper, Phillips and Bamford that served them so well last year. So Leeds are coming into a bit of form. Players are back. Rafinha's playing really well. Dan James is starting to score goals. Lampard's gone into Everton. He's changed to this 3-4-3, and he wants them to play. And from watching the first couple of games, my big problem with it is that he's got players in the defensive third that aren't really great at playing. Michael Keane, Yerry Mina, not great in possession. Mina was injured against Newcastle, may miss the game. Branthwaite may come in if he stays with this 3 at the back. And when pressed, it's clear that they're going to give up the ball. And if they play back to Pickford, it's not really short and sharp. He's going to hit those big boomers that he likes to hit. And we're not going to pick up, Everton are not going to pick up second balls. Unless Dominic Calvert-Lewin plays, Everton have no strength in the air. I'm going to stop saying we because I want to appear impartial.
It's too late for that, mate.
Yeah, I know, right? We. And I can see that, Lampard wants to play with this box, but it's whether he's got the players to do it. Now, through centre midfield, Alan's a good ball player. Andre Gomez is okay, but there's no tempo. It's so slow. And in those inside pockets, when Pochettino played it really well with Spurs back in the Wanyama and Dembele days, is when he had Eriksen and Ali in the pockets. Now, we brought in Van der Beek and Ali. Now, I don't know if Lampard's forward thinking, okay, well, can I get Ali into one pocket on one side, maybe Van der Beek into the other, or maybe Van der Beek a bit deeper to get us moving forward quicker. But really, for me, the key for Lampard is, firstly, who to play at wing-back, and do we have players that can play at wing-back? Seamus Coleman on one side, does he have the legs to get up and down? Mylenko can do it on the left, but injured. Andros Townsend, not a great fit for me there. Anthony Gordon playing in the inside pockets, probably a little bit too dynamic, wants to play 1v1 and be sharp, but his receiving and his passing skills maybe not quite good enough. So I'm thinking, the key for me for Everton and Lampard is, can he get Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the same team? Can he play Calvert-Lewin at the top? Can he maybe play Richarlison and Ali in the pockets? Two centre midfielders, get the fullbacks bombing on. But in this game, the real thing that's going to kind of drag me towards this as our tactic discussion is because Leeds love to go 1v1 with that high pressure. That high pressure to stop teams from playing out. And if Everton want to play with the players that they have and the dynamism they have in that defensive third, I really feel like Leeds can get on top of Everton, really force them into lots of turnovers and win ball in those key areas high up the pitch where they can then break and expose what is not a very dynamic Everton back line.
You touched on it briefly there, and I guess it kind of crosses over into what we were talking about earlier. But with regards to Leeds, we had a tweet in from HXLLY Burner wondering how many games there will be left with the season, with the end of the season drawing closer, for Phillips, Bamford to have an impact on their overall finishing position at the moment, because it's clear, and we've spoken about it before actually on this show, that they're massive misses for Leeds. Yeah, they've really missed Phillips in that kind of pivot role to dictate the tempo of the game and to be that balance. They've tried Robin Koch in there. They've now gone to a 2 with Click and Koch, and up front they've played around with Rodrigo and played around with Dan James. And going into this game, it's like, right, how do they do it? Do they go with Dan James to get down the sides of centre halves that maybe can't move mobility wise? But with Dan James, my problem is that he makes runs, he gets wide a little bit too early. He's spent his whole career playing on the touchline and playing 1v1 and using his pace. And now he has to play inside the pitch, which anyone that knows, who's played as a wide player and suddenly gets put in the middle of the pitch, it's very difficult to adapt playing 360 from playing from the outside to inside. Now, if they paid Rodrigo to draw the centre halves out and, get Rafinha and Harrison running on the inside, maybe that would be an area that Leeds could exploit, because Everton in transition down the sides of those centre halves are vulnerable, and you're not getting a lot of mobility going the other way from the likes of Andre Gomez. Alan is competitive and will fight. But this high pressing 1v1 aggressive style, Newcastle showed at St James's Park that if you get on top of Everton and Lampard wants to play, there could be real trouble for Everton in this game if they do try and play. And, if the game starts to go away from them early, maybe Leeds score, what are the Goodison Park crowd going to do? Are they going to turn? Is it going to become a really kind of volcanic, kind of crazy atmosphere where the fans are on top of the team already coming off that defeat against Newcastle? And obviously only one win in 15, which was at Goodison Park. Do you have any suggested bets then, or any advice?
Yeah, well, both teams struggle to defend set pieces. Everton are actually quite good at attacking set pieces, and I do think this will be very transitional. Now, Everton coming out of the Leeds game, coming out of the Newcastle game with injuries to Damari Gray, with injuries to Yerry Mina. Who fits in there? Does Dele Alli start? He was poor against Newcastle, didn't really get up to the tempo of the game. Donny van der Beek looked okay. But for me, I think here, with the two teams, how they are, the league positions, Goodison Park, full crowd, Lampard's first game in the Premier League at home, I think this is a game where there's going to be goals. So I would recommend that the goal line, 2.5, 2.75, I would be overs on that. and potentially even a bet on Leeds on the handicap. There will be maybe a big price at +0.5 or +0.25. The safer money for me is on the goals, but if you fancied a little outside shot as well, I would fancy Leeds on the handicap, because I do think this game could get away from Everton quickly.
Okay, in our Premier League preview this week, we're going to take a look at Spurs against Wolves. And Antonio Conte, after they lost to Southampton, said that Tottenham suffered from mental instability. Another sort of punchy statement from Conte. That's the second time he's sort of come out and criticised Spurs. How do you see this one shaping up?
I think if you looked in the Oxford Dictionary, under the phrase mental instability, you would just see a picture of Emerson Royale and Reguilon, and then maybe a little coaching video on how to head the football. And also probably Davinson Sanchez being taken off for a walk with a blindfold on, because he does love to wander around the pitch like a blind man every now and again.
Reguilon's miss as well, but I didn't see lots of people talking about that afterwards. But he was clean through on goal. Great pass by Kane, and he missed an I mean, it was a decent save, but he hit it straight at Forster. It was, that obviously changes the game massively. That
was a perfect example of what Spurs are good at. That explosive ability to break with their front three, who I feel like, if they can get a run together, will be as valuable to Spurs as Mane, Salah and Jota are to Liverpool. And a few people will probably shout at the screen and go, "What are you talking about, man? You don't know what you're talking about." But yeah, coming off back-to-back defeats now, exposed by Southampton under the press, very narrow shape from Southampton, 4-2-2-2, really squeezed Spurs, and they couldn't play Højbjerg and Winks right on top of the centre halves. But when they can break it, those front three are so dynamic, wing backs joining in, that tempo and that pace that they can play at is really good. And this game against Wolves will be a very different matchup for me. Wolves will be a lot more conservative, not as aggressive in the press, not as good at delivering crosses from those inside pockets as Southampton, getting around the outside to deliver balls, and really don't attack crosses well at all. So the areas where Spurs can be a little bit vulnerable are really not going to be exposed by Wolves here. Formation very similar, maybe a 3-5-2 as we talked about in the preview of the Arsenal game that's coming up tonight. If it's a 2, then Son and Moura in those pockets on the outside of those two could cause real problems. And the front three of Spurs can really expose the back three of Wolves, especially in transition. And also an additional part of this game to think about is that Wolves don't have that plan B now. They don't have Traore on the counter-attack. So a lot of the game is going to be in front of Spurs, which is going to suit them. And they looked a lot more balanced against Brighton. Last night, it was just not a good performance. I mean, they were exposed massively in those key areas that I just talked about. But Wolves' area that they could get Spurs would be Podence inside pocket around Davinson Sanchez, like I mentioned. The position of Emerson Royale isn't great. He's not sure whether to be in the line or be out, and Sanchez wanders. So they might be able to get Nouri around the back with Podence in the pockets. But I do think this is a game where Spurs' front three will be key to them getting a victory.
It's always the case with them. They're quite heavily reliant on them, aren't they?
Oh, massive. When you look at their when you look at their outputs, they've got 16 goals between them. They're the guys that carry the XG for the team. They're the guys that have the 9 assists between them. Lucas Moura adds that little bit of something different with his ability to dribble and his kind of ability to go and press the ball. He has 60 dribbles for the team this season. And defensively, both teams up until last night, and the market may shift actually tonight on the Arsenal game. So the reason I wanted to talk about this game is because what Bet It Right punters should look out for over the next couple of days is the price shift and the drift on Spurs. With their performance last night, if Wolves can have a positive result against Arsenal tonight, I could see the price for Wolves Spurs drifting, and for them to become actually quite good value. At the moment, they're about -3/4 on the handicap market, but I think they might drift to -0.5. And at that point, I think they're a really good bet in this game, because despite the Southampton game, the matchup with Wolves is far, far better and in Conte's favour.
Yeah, and all that information that we're talking about, as we say it time and time again on this show, is available for you. It's all there. betitright.com is the website address. Head to that, and you can see it all for yourselves as well. Okay, so that's just is that the bet then? Keep an eye on the market and potentially Tottenham in this.
Yeah, have a look at Tottenham. I liked Tottenham with a matchup even before last night's game, but I do think now that punters may be able to benefit from a better price. So it would be a game where I'd be looking to wait a couple of days, keep your eye on the price, see if Tottenham are drifting. -3/4 right now, you might be able to get them at -0.5. And I do think it's a much better matchup. And you know that Conte is on the training pitch today, bashing some heads, delivering some crosses and making people head the ball for 3 days. So I would be very surprised if we don't see a much different performance against Wolves at the weekend.
In the Championship, probably the sexiest touchline of them all this weekend. West Brom versus Blackburn, Steve Bruce versus Tony Mowbray.
Well, before, I didn't want to talk about this game purely because it's Valentine's Day, but there's something quite romantic about two old centre halves with, good old faces, Bruce's nose, Mowbray's nose, and just a Valentine's Day loving at the Hawthorns. I mean, what more could you want? If anyone out there, if anybody right users are struggling for something to do with their girlfriend, West Brom, Blackburn Rovers on Valentine's Day.
Did I tell you? I can't remember if I've told the story about Steve Bruce and my dad on this show before. Have you heard it?
No. Talk to me.
So dad's a talk sport, whatever reporter, as you know, but he's also a Villa fan, and that's the third team that he's ever supported in his life. It's bizarre anyway. When Steve Bruce was at Villa, Dad was became the spokesperson for Villa fans on the radio and spent the best part, I'd say, of about a year calling for Steve Bruce to be sacked.
Right.
And it was gathering momentum, and then eventually he did get sacked. And about a week later, after the sacking, we went to an awards do in London, and whoever did the table plan deserves an absolute medal, because Dad was sat next to Mr. Bruce, and on his right was Mrs. Bruce, who proceeded to spend the whole lunch going, "You got my husband sacked, you bastard." And my dad is one of the most awkward men on the planet anyway, but watching him during that lunch was an absolute delight for me. I was having the time of my life. Anyway, that's my Steve story. But he was a gentleman when I met him. I hope he does well at West Brom. They are struggling at the moment, though. They lost to Sheffield United. They're on a bad run.
Yeah, they are on a bad run. Both teams having a little bit of a rocky spell. Both teams had red cards in midweek in their respective defeats against Sheffield United and Forest, 2-0. Two teams that are both very much on the up and ones to look out for in the Championship to make the playoffs and maybe even automatic promotion. But yeah, 1 win in 8 games. Valérien Ismaël obviously got the sack. Really weird style that he was playing at West Brom. Very direct, like he was still at Barnsley. Played that at Barnsley, up and at you, in your face, brought Daryl DK in on loan and then signed him for West Brom. But kept the same style when they just weren't getting results and weren't scoring goals. And DK pulled his hamstring, he's out for 10 games straight away after his big money move, which is a huge problem for them. So what do you do when you need a striker? You need goals in the Championship. You go and get Andy Carroll. Welcome back.
Who are you going to call?
Exactly. Well, the question is, is Andy Carroll going to be able to play 90 minutes every week? Carl Ahern Grant's been their main centre forward, has got 10 goals and is a lively player. But that target player that they clearly want, that Steve Bruce likes, as we know, will he be able to play more than every other week, especially in the Championship where there's midweek games? And talking about strikers flipping the other side, Ben Brereton Diaz was away with Chile, he's now back. The question for me about Blackburn has been, have they been overperforming? Their league position, they're up there in third, but I think that they've probably been overperforming, and the XG and the goals would suggest it as well. They're overperforming on goals, and they're also overperforming defensively. Teams aren't taking chances against them, which, as we know in football, that's what we talk about, right? We talk about probability. We talk about the likelihood of things happening. At some point, it's going to happen. And right now, they've lost 3 out of the last 5. Both Rothwell and Ben Brereton Diaz are out of contract in the summer. So maybe that's on their mind. I think Bournemouth were in for Rothwell in the window. And, Ben Brereton Diaz has scored 20 goals, but again, only from 15 XG. So is he overperforming as well? So this is an interesting matchup between two teams that need to get their seasons back on track to have a chance of being in with a shout, especially when you've got your Sheffield Uniteds and your Forests, on the rails, on the chase. And Bournemouth had a great window as well and have now got back-to-back wins and look like they're back in the sweet spot again.
Well, Todd Cantwell going there is good signing.
Well, they've got Cantwell, they've got Kiefer Moore at centre forward. You know, Scott Parker, everyone said it was maybe a bit of panic buying, but I think, you know, 2 wins out of 2 speaks for itself, and it's going to be tough to break into that group. But a potential bet for this game for me, at 1-0, I don't think either team goes for it. Bruce needs a win. Blackburn need to get their season back on. You know, it's Valentine's Day. They'll have their minds will be elsewhere. So I think a potential bet for this could be under 2.5. A bit of a bore fest at the Hawthorns for all those lovers out there.
Massive week of football in Serie A, actually. A massive weekend, I should say. There's basically top of the table clashes. Napoli against Inter, Atalanta, Juve, not quite top of the table, but it's an important game with regards to the outrights for Serie A, important weekend. What can you tell us about what's going to happen in Italy this weekend?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's massive. You've got Atalanta, who are 5th, 9 points behind 3rd. You've got Juventus, who are 4th, 7 points behind 3rd. And then at the top, it's 53, 52, 52. And it's, you know, Juve.
Right.
Yeah, Inter top, and then Napoli, Milan on goal difference. But Juve were dead. They were dead. Before Allegri came back in, no one was talking about them being part of the title race. But because you've got that matchup this weekend, if Juve beat Atalanta and maybe there's a draw in the other game, or, you know, maybe that would be the ideal result for them, right? For it to go into 54, Napoli 53. And suddenly, you know, they're getting closer and they've closed that gap again. They're only 7 points behind 3rd right now. Atalanta, 1 win in 6 games, really struggling, had a massive COVID outbreak, had 10 unbeaten, COVID outbreak, 1 win in the last 6, playing fringe players and kids, and now they've got injuries to Zapata and Musso suspended, and they've had 3 0-0 draws in the last 6 games, and they are like the goal kings. They're the guys we love, the great entertainers, and the wheels have fallen off for them. And Juve unbeaten in 10 games. In a previous show, we talked about them winning 2-0 every week and how it kills, it makes it a real sweat on the goal line if you're betting on Juve. 2.5, 2.25, overs, unders. And they've had 6 2-0s in the last 10 games. They're right back into that Juve. And, you know, last week we talked about the January signings. Vlahovic and Zakaria both scored at the weekend in their 2-0 win against Verona. Potentially injured Zakaria, Chiellini as well. But, you know, Juve in the last 12 versus the first 12 of the season are just a complete contrast from a numbers perspective in that sweet spot. And I do think that they are massive value at draw no bet, which you can get 1.91 right now. That may, you know, they may shorten towards the weekend depending on the injury news. But I do think them away at Atalanta, draw no bet is a great bet for this weekend. Okay,
that's good to know. The title race in Serie A is probably, of all the major European leagues, the only one that has, I say the only one, it's the most interesting, because I still think that there would be hope, and Juventus have come back into the picture. So sort of 3 or 4 teams can actually still win Serie A, whereas in the other leagues, it's basically done in most of them. Maybe 1 or 2 teams here or there, but it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. Juventus, a good bet by Dean this weekend, draw no bet at Atalanta. What else is going on in Europe? There's a big game in Portugal, is that right? First and second, Porto Sporting.
Yeah, this is the basic final shootout for the league title, I think. First versus second. Sporting haven't won this fixture since 2007, which doesn't bode well. And you'd like to think that they need to win this game. Porto 6 points ahead. A win takes them 9 points clear of second place, and that would probably be the end of the season, given that, as to date, Porto haven't lost a game. 19 wins and 2 draws this season, trying to get another unbeaten season as they have done in the past. You know, I did a bit of research on this, and Benfica are actually unbeaten. They've got the best unbeaten run ever in Portugal. How many games do you reckon they were unbeaten for? Just give us a guess. And yeah,
15, 20.
Not well. Porto have been unbeaten for 21 already, and they could be unbeaten, and they've been unbeaten for a whole season before, which is 34. So it's got to be more than that. There you go.
Who's been unbeaten for a whole season before? And Invincibles in Portugal.
Oh, a couple of times. And Benfica and Portugal.
Really?
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. Yeah.
See, I'm such a sort of fair weather fan. I only concentrate on Arsenal being the Invincibles. Okay, well, let's say 55 then.
That's for the worst ever first guess in history. Your second guess is unbelievably close. 56.
Really?
Yeah, between October 76 and September 78. Amazing.
I mean, almost as amazing as how bad my first guess was. When I think about that, I mean, it just couldn't have been worse. I mean, like,
given I told you Porto were unbeaten in 21 this season, your first guess was 50.
But also as well, like,
we can cut that out, right?
Midday, yeah, we're definitely editing that for the second guess. But mid-table teams in England probably go on unbeaten runs of like 8 or 9. Do you know what I mean? Like just loads of draws. Anyway, good on them.
But with Diaz leaving to Liverpool, Vitinha, who was on loan at Wolves last season, is a big player for them coming in. Sporting won the league last year. They've only lost one game. If you look at the attacking stats for both teams, massive XG, massive goals for both teams. Neither team concedes either. And from the mindset from Sporting going into this game, it's almost like they can't lose because Benfica are right there for the second Champions League spot in third place. So the manager's going to be going in thinking, well, do I want to hold on to the Champions League spot or do I want to try and win the league? Is that 6 points too much? So it's a really difficult one to kind of think about. But for me, Porto at home, haven't lost this game since 2007, unbeaten all season. They are even money at home to win the game. Unbeaten in 15 games. Unbeaten at home. Porto are even money. And the goal line is 2.5 and there or thereabouts on even money as well. And given that I think Sporting will have to try and force this game, they've been a lot more open in recent games than they'd started the season where they were quite defensive. Last 8 or so games, you've seen their XG rise, their XG conceded rise. So I think that actually Porto and the overs is not a bad shout in this game, which should be an absolute banger.
I'm going to blame that guess on the world's worst hangover that I've had for the last 48 hours. Go steady on me. Okay, brilliant stuff. So that's about it, isn't it, for this week? I think we're done and dusted. I very much like the confidence you're sort of installing on Juve at Atalanta. Your bullishness with regards to that has lured me into having a go at that, I think. Is that your bet of the week, if you had to have one?
Well, I kind of like quite a few bets this week. And the Leeds Everton game, the overs there, I think, will blow up. I think Spurs will do a job on Wolves with good value. The Valentine's Day love-in at the Hawthorns would be probably lower down on my pecking list. And then the Serie A bet, the Juve draw no bet. And the Porto Sporting. There's loads of great games this weekend, loads of good football on show, and punters need to get on, bet it right, spend some time looking at statistics, build those ACCAs, build those little trebles, use our data and use the provision that's there. And like we always say, this is completely free. Share with your friends, retweet, sign up, use it to your advantage and fill your pockets with cash. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, well said. It's completely free. It's all there for you. And it's good fun as well. Dean, thank you, mate. Great to see you.
Pleasure.
We'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Yeah.
Well, for me, different place and a different time because I won't be in Barbados next week. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'll still be here, sat in this room, same as every week. Looking forward to talking to you again.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. BetItRight.com is the website. Follow us on Twitter as well. BIR Insights, BIR Prompts for all your updates throughout the course of what should be another very enjoyable weekend of football. We'll see you next time.